have institutional knowledge, in one webinar room over here. And the best part is that apart from, our important panelists who will be speaking and navigating the whole session through their experiences, what they have done, I would like to introduce also here with, or rather I have the honor to introduce here with the new ambassador of Austria, Her Excellency, Mrs. Katharina Wieser. Thank you very much for joining us, ma'am. I know it was a short notice for you, but this is a sort of a, we had, a program where we could, introduce you to the people with whom we are in touch, or the institution with whom we are in touch since 2005 or even before that. Am I right, Mrs. Dr. Prest? You have to yeah. So in this
You're
case,
right.
Thank you. Now, before going any further, I would rather say, of course, that we have a flow of program which you have seen. I'll just show it to you, which has been sent to everybody, and we will stick to this and we'll go through that. And the best part is that we are not discussing, or we are not doing any sort of a workshop now, but what we are discussing through the able and esteemed team of Dr. Gabriela Christ is the experiences, how they started their journey in India with the conservation and preservations of various sites, which was regionally in North India, then it came on to the South India, and even it went up to Nepal. So I'm very glad that we will be having first-hand information from various people who would be speaking and talking that. But before that, I would like to request our ambassador, Her Excellency, Mrs. Katharina Wieser, to kindly begin the session with a keynote address, and I'll say a few words of encouragement to all of us. Thank you very much. Ambassador, may I?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Distinguished panelists from India and Austria, friends of the Austrian Cultural Forum, ladies and gentlemen, I am extremely pleased to be part of this webinar on conservation of cultural heritage across borders, and to deliver a kind of keynote speech, welcome address, I would say. All the more so since I arrived in India only very recently, 3 weeks ago, today actually, to take up my new position as Ambassador of Austria, making this one of the very first events on bilateral cooperation between Austria and India I have the pleasure of participating in. This event is the result of and demonstrates the close cooperation of eminent institutions of both countries in the field of preservation and conservation, such as the University of Applied Arts, the Angewandte, Wien, the Bundesdenkmalamt or Federal Monuments Office of Austria, and also the National Museum of India, the National Museum Institute, the Archaeology Survey of India, and Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts, and many others. Professor Dr. Gabriele Christ, who I have the honor of meeting in this way for the first time online, head of the Institute of the Conservation at the University of Applied Arts, is a well-known personality in her subject, who together with her team has contributed enormously in this field. I personally look forward to supporting the work of all the above-mentioned institutions and experts from both countries during my assignment here in India, and to further deepen and the cooperation in the field of heritage protection, as well as the promotion of cultural diversity. The protection of our cultural heritage is an important foundation for a better understanding of our common world heritage and goes hand in hand with respect for different cultures. It can also positively affect economic development through regional development, the development of tourism, the protection of biodiversity, and the promotion of scientific research. And of course, it leads to a better understanding of our diverse cultures and therefore to a better understanding of each other. I'm sure you will agree with me that a particular focus should be on schools and young people, education of young people. Knowledge of history and awareness of our heritage values are an important foundation for dealing with the challenges of the present and the future. It is excellent to learn that institutions like the Angewandte Wien and the National Museum Institute have intensely worked under the leadership of Professor Dr. Christ and Professor Neer on students' exchange and higher studies programs. As a result of which, today amongst us is a distinguished panelist, Dr. Tanushree Gupta, who obtained her PhD degree under the able guidance of Dr. Christ and is closely associated with the Angewandte Wien's Institute of Conservation. Another point I would like to emphasize is that heritage embraces more than collections of objects or monuments. It also includes intangible manifestations, such as traditions of living expressions. Here, the role of museums in the preservation and protection of both the tangible and intangible heritage of humanity can contribute significantly. I am very glad to have learned that in this sphere too, the Austrian institutions, together with their Indian counterparts, have been working quite closely and setting role models. So I'm pleased to read in the program that in this webinar, our panelists will steer us through different regions in India and Nepal, where they have worked in numerous fields of preservation and conservation. Therefore, I may conclude with thanking you all and wishing you an interesting journey through this webinar on conservation of cultural heritage across borders. Thank you very much for your attention. Munish, I think over to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those nice and kind words and encouraging words, and especially your point of view that the youngsters, the students should be taught not only of future, but of the past. And I'm sure Dr. Gabriela Christ will also be of the same opinion, so that, you know, they, for a better tomorrow, they should know about their past and future. Thank you very much indeed. Now, before we start, we will start, of course, with Dr. Gabriela Christ, who will take us down to the numerous projects which has been conducted under her flagship and has been, you know, concentrated in the region of India and Nepal. Before that, I mean, of course, Dr. Gabriela Christ is not a personality who is not known. She doesn't need an introduction, but as mandatory requirement of any conference, I would like to briefly introduce Dr. Gabriela Christ. Kindly excuse me if I make any mistake. I think so her student Tanushree can always intervene if I am, you know, missing on any point. Professor Gabriela Christ is a professor at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, Institute of Conservation since 1999. She studied conservation at the Academy of Fine Arts, Vienna, as well as art history and archaeology in Vienna and Salzburg. For many years, she worked in ICROM in Rome and at the Austrian Federal Office for the Care of Monuments, Bundeskanzleramt, which is, I think, so equal to, for our Indian partners, Indian guests, which is equal to Archaeological Survey of India. Am I right? And is a UNESCO chair holder. Dr. Christ, I had an opportunity and I'm had the privilege of knowing you since 2005 when you came to India and with regard to the Nako monasteries project. Now, before taking any more time, I would like to hand over the floor to you to take us down the memory lanes from 2005 till now, how you have done and what were your experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Monish. You studied my CV very carefully. Thank you so much. Dear Excellency, I'm very happy and grateful to meet you today in Zoom, but hope that meetings in presence will be possible in the next years. We hope all that Corona ends. Distinguished colleagues and of course, dear friends, many of you I know. First of all, I'm very happy to see my old friend, Professor Nair, again in Zoom. Hope to try in person next time. Dhanushri established this program together with you, Monish, and she said I should shortly run through all the international projects we have accomplished, not only in India, but also in other countries, because she will then take the floor to explain in depth what has been achieved or what kind of cooperations we had with India. But let me first say that India is really my preferred country to work in and with, because it was also our first experience to go abroad. And the most difficult and the most demanding project was really Nako. You know, Nako is a small village close to Durbar in the north of Himachal Pradesh, 4,000 meter high. Extremely difficult to reach, 3 jeep travels, day trips from Delhi, terrible roads, an adventure. And this was the first project we joined in together with Professor Klimburg-Salter from the University of Vienna. Katharina Wieser will know her, and Jutta Stefan Bastel at that time, at the beginning of the new century, ambassador in Delhi. She supported this project with her heart, and I think she went twice with Deborah to Nako, and she wanted to see. So in Nako, the theme was research of the temple complex, of this wonderful Buddhist temple complex, starting from the 11th century onwards. 4 temples, and Deborah and her students and PhD students researched it from an art historical point of view, and we were invited to join as a conservation partner. You cannot do it alone, so that's why it's always important to have a strong partner at your side, and this was the starting point to work with Professor Nair, at that time director of NRLC in Lucknow, later on professor at NMI in Delhi, and we were already very familiar with each other through ICROM, where we met, I don't know, in the 80s, I think. So, and we aged together. We aged together, and we professionally, yeah, grow together. So Nako was difficult, but most challenging and the most important project we had. There is a big publication on it, I don't know, 400 pages long, where all the results have been summarized. Professor Nair supported not only with analytical investigation, but also providing experienced staff members familiar with wall paintings conservation in this region. And 2010 was our last time there. Before 2009, I think Dalai Lama reconsecrated the temples in Nako, and it was my great honor to meet this wonderful person on the site, and we could explain personally what we have done, and yeah, so this was NACO. Then when Professor Nair joined NMI, in the same moment our cooperation started with bilateral training. We delivered several workshops on textiles, metal conservation, preventive conservation, analytical procedures together with NMI in Delhi. And then also we achieved support in our team by 4 Indian PhD students who conducted some parts of their PhD under the leadership of Professor Nair. I was not their supervisor, it was Professor Nair, but our institute could provide facilities and expertise in different fields, what was at that time missing in Delhi, because we are very strong in practical conservation work, and we have fully equipped workshops where textiles, paintings, objects, and stone monuments can be restored and conserved. Professor Nair retired. He went home to Kerala, not retired, but had other issues and other responsibilities achieved, responsible at that time for the museums. And then a big project at Napier Museum in Trivandrum started. And before Corona came in 2020, we were, Munish Bal knows, of course, because he joined Cochin, and with Excellency Oeppinger, we opened the first workshop in the framework of Museeris project, archaeological excavation and sites, and we dealt with objects in Museeris. And since 2020, March, when the whole Corona problem started, Tanushree and me, we spent some days in Delhi and said goodbye to Mrs. Oeppinger. And Tanushree is since that time stuck in Delhi, and I wait her with, we are waiting all for her to come finally to Vienna again, because online work is something different than work, proper work at the institute where you can meet all the colleagues and so on. So Tanushree, please come. What should I say further to India without repeating things what Tanushree will tell? I jumped to Nepal. In Nepal, we started our work in 2009 when NACO gets its end. And since 2009, we were every year twice in Nepal, especially in Patan. World Heritage Monument, the Royal Palace and Durbar Square with all these beautiful monuments. You know that Austria has a long-standing experience working with Nepal. There are many important people I try to mention. This is Professor Sekla, who was in the 60s already in Nepal and made the first conservation master plan for the Kathmandu Valley. And then Götz Hackmüller, an Austrian architect who lives until now in Nepal, and very good architect who also created one of the most beautiful museums in the world, I believe, the Patan Museum, which was also supported a lot with Austrian money, and so on. Then 2015, there was this terrible earthquake in Nepal, and we received big funding from the Austrian Development Agency and from the BKA, Bundes Ministry of Culture, to support earthquake response measures in Nepal. My colleague Martina Hasselberger, who dedicates also her PhD work to Patan, linking tangible and intangible heritage in her research work, will later on talk in detail about the Nepal project. Mongolia is on the list, and also China with our international cooperations. China, especially Silk Road conferences since many years. Tanushree Gupta is also involved in this project. She presently finishes the postprints of our last conference in Iran, which covered this topic from archaeological point of view and also challenges in conservation. Recently, we established a cooperation with Thailand, and we formulated a joint MA program. Might be also interesting for our Indian colleagues, a 2 years master program together with Thailand, where working sessions in Thailand and Austria are foreseen, and also management issues dealing with cultural heritage. So I invite very much our Indian colleagues and institutions to join in. Application is at the moment open, and we expect the start of the program early 2022. International summer schools, to finish off, this was a project, or this is a project since many years, where we try to collect students from all our international partners. And this format is interesting because we rotate in the different countries. Mongolia was on the schedule after Vienna for the first 4 years. Mongolia is waiting because it should be in 2020 in the summer. That summer school is taking place in Mongolia, but it was not possible. Corona stopped all activities and travels. So we're waiting maybe that 2022 it will be possible to make this summer school in Mongolia, and India is then in the following year. You might question where all the money comes from. We have 2 university networks. The one especially important for India is Eurasia Pacific Uninet. Professor Rausch is our president, and Angewandte, my university, and also Indira Gandhi and NMI are members in this network. And so we can cover travel costs, workshop programs in the framework of this Uninet. When partners are paying members, travel money and exchange is possible. The second one is ASEA, working with Thailand and Southeast Asia. And of course, the money provided for our earthquake response program in Nepal. I already mentioned the Austrian institutions and ministries who supported the program. I think this is nearly my end. I was maybe too long in the discussion, but I would be very pleased to receive your questions. If I forgot something, please, Monish or Tanushree, give me a hint. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much.
Munish, maybe I forgot something. For India, we organized also with Gudrun Hardiman-Polres this conference to celebrate 60 years of Austrian-Indian diplomatic relations.
That's right.
It was in 2009, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, this was a wonderful thing, and Eba Koch, our expert on Taj Mahal, she guided also the whole embassy people, Austrian embassy people. We had a wonderful excursion with her to Taj Mahal. And
well, again, at that time, the thanks goes to Professor Nair, who towards the end, he could have
otherwise we could not enter.
We
exactly.
could not have entered.
Professor Naya is our angel, you know?
That's the thing, yeah.
He's our angel. So
That's the thing.
only not to forget this conference, because I think other jubilees will come.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Chris. Long, definitely it was not. Short, of course not, but it could, gives the crux of the whole, point of view and whole work which you have been doing in this particular part of the region. Now, as per the agenda and as per the program of today, I think so we will go straight away to Nepal first. And I would like to invite Mrs. Hazelberger, the stone conservator, who is working with the Institute of Conservation, University of Applied Art. Martina Hazelberger studied conservation and restoration at the Institution of Conservation, University of Applied Arts, Vienna, and Cultural Property Protection at Danube University, Krems. Currently, she is pursuing her doctoral research as staff of the Institution of Conservation. She has been research association in FWF-funded projects and is involved in teaching as well as planning, organizing, and implementing of international conservation projects in Nepal, India, and Mongolia. I'm sorry, Martina, in case if I've missed anything, kindly excuse me. Now the floor is yours. Kindly guide us through what has happened in Nepal under your flagship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bal, for the kind introduction. So I will today present what happened in Nepal under the flagship supervision of Professor Christ. Actually, so she's the head of our international projects, but I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy and proud to be part of the Nepal project since 2015 already. And I will now provide you a short overview introduction. So, hello, everybody, dear Excellency, Mr. Munish Bal, dear colleagues and friends from India and other countries probably. My name is Martina Haselberger, and I will today talk about Nepal, our project. So probably all of you know where Nepal is. It's directly in north of India, and we are mainly active in the capital. So I marked it here in the Kathmandu Valley, and here in Patan, one of the 3 former royal cities, and today more or less part of the big urban area in the Kathmandu Valley. Patan is, or the Patan Durbar Square is part of the Kathmandu Valley UNESCO World Heritage Property, which comprises 7 sites in the Kathmandu Valley, including the Durbar Squares of the 3 former royal cities, Kathmandu, Patan, and Bhaktapur, as well as 2 stupas and 2 Hindu monuments. Excuse me. So, okay, thank you. As Professor Christ already mentioned, Austria and Nepal have a very long-standing collaborative relationship when it comes to the conservation and preservation of cultural heritage and its research and documentation. And some important persons were already mentioned, and I will go through them very quickly. One that was not mentioned so far is architect Karl Pruscher, Viennese architect, who did the first complete inventory of the cultural monuments in the valley, which is still used and valid today. It was comprised in 1974. Here you see Mr. Seckler, architect and architectural historian. Sorry, the phone is very busy today, so he did the first master plan, as already mentioned, for the Kathmandu Valley, which was also an important base for the inscription as a UNESCO World Heritage property. Here you see architect Götz Hagmuller, who was mainly responsible for the renovation, restoration, and revitalization of the Royal Palace wing, which you see here of this jog, which was transformed into the well-known Patan Museum with support of the Austrian government. And here you see one of our teams, I think the one from 2009, as far as I remember. So our institute is involved in conservation restoration at the Patan Durbar Square since 2010 or 2009. The collaboration was initiated by Professor Eduard Zeckler, who contacted one of our senior staff, Manfred Trummer, and Professor Christ, and asked for conservation support in the course of all this work, which is done at the monuments and the square and the Royal Palace. And Zeckler is also a co-founder of the Kathmandu Valley Preservation Trust, an international INGO, which is responsible or very active in cultural heritage conservation in Patan, and which is also our main partner on site since the beginning. And here you finally see the Patan Durbar Square and the Royal Palace. Here an aerial view where you can see the whole complex, which is consisting of the Royal Palace, which you see here with the different courtyards and the garden in the back. And facing on the other side, you have a huge square with numerous temples arranged there in so-called pagoda style, so multi-tiered temples, Sikara style temples made of stone, different stone columns and smaller monuments inside arranged everywhere. And the very specific or unique thing about the Patan Durbar Square is that it remained nearly unchanged regarding its composition, regarding the monuments on site since the 19th century. So you see here some drawings from Le Bon and Oldfield dating from the mid of the 19th century and recent views. And you see that most of the arrangement of the composition of the monuments are still in place and preserved. The main elements or the main monuments which one can find at the Durbar Square. I copied here an overview more or less of the inventory of Prussia, showing the different styles and designs of monuments you can find. So we have here the tiered temples and the Sikara style stone buildings, for example. And in the course of our campaigns and our research work done on site, we could also investigate most of the building materials and technologies used for building these monuments. So we have, on the one hand, buildings built or made from brick and timber, more or less, so brick walls with carved timber frames. That is particular Nevar architecture. So the Nevars are the main ethnicity, more or less, which is very famous for its crafts and craftsmanship on site, still very vivid and active. And we have, on the other hand, stone masonry, so stonework, which is mainly done from two varieties of stone. So we have a sedimentary stone and a more metamorphic stone on site, and for sure, for decoration purposes, a lot of fire gilded copper and bronze work. And what is also very unique or outstanding for the Patan Durbar Square, and which was also one of the reasons for it to be inscribed as a World Heritage, as all the other sites in Kathmandu Valley, is the close link of the built heritage with the social and cultural and religious life of the people. So the close linkage of tangible and intangible cultural heritage. We have a very vivid living culture there, as in many regions in Asia. So people use the square and the monuments as a stage, as a background for recreation, for religious worshipping, for festivities, and for a lot of activities. So it plays an important part in their daily life. The main damage or decay factors for the monuments in Patan are, on the one hand, the climate on site. So we have, similar to India also, particularly in the monsoon season, very high humidity. We have the monsoon with heavy rains, which is causing flooding, which is causing growth of plants, mildew, mold. so everything that is related to high humidity. We have often salt problems, particularly for the stone monuments, salts partly coming from inappropriate repair materials that were used, or from the ground, as isolation to the ground is missing. And again, with the water, the salts are mobilized very easily. So that poses often a problem. And you can see here on the top, one of the decay patterns that is resulting from heavy salination of the stone, here the sandstone. What we also have is, as I said, plants and animals, so mainly caused by the high humidity. We have mold, we have moss, algae coming regularly, which you can see here, for example, but also insects attacking particularly the timber structures. One problem that is created by the building tradition on site is that traditionally there is no isolation to the ground, as I said before, so that encourages the travel of salts from the ground. And we have also very heavy roof structures due to the multi-tiered temples. In case of earthquake, this particularly poses a problem as you have a lot of weight on top of the buildings. There is often a lack of maintenance and care of the monuments. Also vandalism and theft, particularly in former times where a lot of artworks and cultural goods were stolen, or there was a lot of illicit trafficking in the past. We had the repairs with inappropriate materials, so mainly cement-based or pure cement applications, iron that was used and is now rusting and causing rust checking. And we have the usage of all the monuments being part of the living culture, which can also, when not correctly handled, cause mechanical damage or loss or abrasion or similar damage patterns. And probably the most destructive cause of decay or damage are the earthquakes. So Nepal is located in one of the most seismic active regions in the world. You can see here a world map with the epicenters of recent earthquakes. And what you can see is that Nepal, here in the Himalayan region, is lying in one of the most active regions. So strong earthquakes are occurring every 80 to 100 years. So destruction is more or less a periodic event in Nepal. And I here just inserted some pictures of the earthquake in 1934, which caused major destruction, but also the recent one in 2015 was very damaging and severe. And what is the answer to these periodic events? It's the concept of cyclical renewal on site. So that means that damaged structures, or after an earthquake, are recovered or damaged elements replaced. So this tradition of cyclical renewal is practiced in Nepal since centuries because of these recurring destructions. And actually, or most of the time, the form, design, function, and environment of the monuments is thereby not affected. So they are just rebuilt in the same design as they were before. But there are some exceptions. For example, in 1934 earthquake, a lot of monuments were rebuilt in a much more simplified design or different design due to time troubles, due to not available resources, not available money. So that was a major problem, and everything was done very hastily and probably in a bad manner, which causes now again damage. The cyclical renewal is also also helps more or less to continue craftsmanship on sites, because craftsmen are engaged in the renewal and replacement of damaged objects and elements. And it also enables that, if available, new additions regarding technology or the material can be added. So for example, if the contemporary taste is slightly changing, or if there are possible improvements regarding the seismic resistance, these can be added during this renewal phases. And now coming to the recent earthquake that also was, or more or less was a problem for us, or we were very feeling with our Nepalese colleagues during this earthquake. It happened in 2015, so there were actually 2 consecutive strong earthquakes near Kathmandu, and they caused major damage to cultural property. So almost 2,900 sites in Nepal were affected, and 700 of them alone in the Kathmandu Valley World Heritage Zone. Here, some impressions of the damage at the Patan Durbar Square. You see here a picture before and afterwards. So major monuments on the square, temples collapsed completely, like here, the Harishankara temple, and here, Tangonarayan temple. The columns collapsed, parts of the royal palace here, the wall facing the garden collapsed, so it was very destructive. Here again, one detail of the Harishankara temple, which collapsed completely. And also 2 of these rest places, the Mani Mandap at the major tank on the square collapsed. So as already mentioned, we supported by our rector and through Professor Christ, who immediately approached the Austrian government after this disaster, we were able to raise funding from the Austrian ministries to start now already 7 years long project to support Nepalese colleagues and contribute to the recovery and restoration of earthquake damaged cultural heritage. And this is particularly important on the one hand for the local community. As I already said, it is the Durbar Square and the cultural heritage is part of their daily life and very important for them. It's also important for mankind as we have a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and also to attract again tourists and visitors, as this is one of the major sources of income. And we are cooperating in this project with the trust I already mentioned, but also with the Patan Museum and the local university, and our funding partners also mentioned here again. And so far, I think probably it's even more conservation campaigns. I'm sorry that it's not the correct number, but we implemented conservation campaigns since then in February and summer, so a lot of work. And the major aims we defined together with our partners on site of this work is, on the one hand, to preserve the historic original substance and elements, so to focus on reuse of as much as possible and conserve as much as possible. On the other hand, we also aim to improve or provide security in the future through a strengthening of the structures, so to increase earthquake resistance and respect in all approaches to authenticity and also traditional technologies and material. And we do this through the international collaboration, on the one hand with the Kathmandu Valley Preservation Trust, but also experts from Germany, from India, from, I think, United States. So everywhere is included. And it's, of course, an interdisciplinary collaboration between us as conservators, but also architects, engineers, art historians, and so on. And all measures or all campaigns also have a focus on capacity building. So on one hand for the students of the university, for example, but also for staff of the museum and the Kathmandu Valley Preservation Trust. And the preconditions for every measure we implement are, of course, archival research. So to have a base to gather all documentation and surveys that are existing, to do a proper condition survey and damage assessment before any intervention, to back up everything with conservation scientific research, particularly on materials, their properties, and damage patterns, as well as deterioration mechanisms, do a proper planning and also documentation of everything, state before, the state after, and all measures to provide this information for future colleagues working on site. And now just I go very quickly through what happened after the earthquake 2015. In the immediate aftermath, under the guidance of the Trust and the Department of Archaeology on site, all the the site or the Durbar square was cleared, but this was done in a very careful way. So they avoided to use any machinery, heavy machinery, because they used only man-force and really collected everything that can be reused. So on the one hand, really building materials, bricks and timber that can be reused for the reconstruction of the monuments, but also all the valuable decorative parts and elements. So any carvings, any sculptures, any metal decoration, everything was pulled out by hand from the debris and then collected in the courtyard here of the museum, which was not affected and could be secured because it's a closed area. And then they started to sort everything together with experts on the monuments on site and together with existing inventories, sorted everything. And then also with our support and the financial support from Austria, some temporary storages in the garden could be erected. So you see the inside of one of them here. So very simple constructions, but very important ones, because the earthquake happened in May, in June, and monsoon is approaching around July. So it was very important to store all the delicate and sensitive objects under a shelter, secured somewhere so that they don't get completely wet and are destroyed by humidity and so on, or are stolen. So that was a very important measure at the beginning. What was also done is that all still standing but damaged objects were shored up, so with these temporary beams erected so that they don't collapse in the course of any earthquake coming in the following weeks or months. And all structures, particularly those with damaged roofs, were temporarily covered here with tarpaulins to also, when the monsoon is approaching, to prevent water infiltration into the structures because the roofs were open. And then over the years, there was also the Kathmandu Valley Preservation Trust more or less elaborated a plan how to proceed with all the monuments, to give priorities, also always in discussion with us and other partners. And then each year, projects were tackled. So here, and the projects more or less, it started always with investigation, preferably non-invasive investigations. You can see here, for example, we do some ultrasound measuring in order to detect any internal cracks within the stone and to more or less give an estimation on the state of conservation of the stones, so if they are affected, if they can be reused for the re-erection of the temple. And after that, investigations, conservation treatments start. So we try to preserve as much of the original elements as possible. And this was also done when parts of elements were lost or heavily decayed. So we always tried to preserve original substance and only add or restore as much as possible. You can see here, for example, on the beams. Here you see the original part, and this one is the replacement or the new part. And here also original part, and here is a replacement done by craftsmen. And the same for the stone monuments. So all the fillings and indents were made really exactly fitting to the joint in order to preserve as much of the original substance as possible. And we also did, as I said, we improved the seismic strengthening of structures. So this was done, first of all, by investigating how was the original building technology. So how were the monuments built, more or less. Most of them have simple plug-in systems. So there are stone dowels and a hole, and the monuments are just stick one above each other. This was, for example, the case with the stone pillar of Yoganarendra Malla, which you can see here. Probably you remember on one of the first pictures, you saw that the column had collapsed. So the upper parts, this and the sculpture fell down. And we had the honor or the pleasure to, together with the trust, re-erect this sculpture in one of the campaigns. And what we did is with the investigation, we could first conclude on the original system, how it was built. So we have different elements that were held together by these stone dowels, which you can see here, but they were unfortunately too small in size, so underproportioned, and the holes were partly too big. So we were afraid that in case of future earthquake, this column will collapse again. So we tried to slightly keep the traditional system, but improve it by inserting, you see here, these stainless steel pins. So more or less to keep the dowel system, the plug-in system, but enlarge it a bit and thus avoid that the parts fall off. But what we also did is we kept the flexibility of the structure. So the whole column is allowed to move in case of an earthquake. So horizontal movement is possible because they are not glued together, the parts, but they can move but cannot jump off. So that was elaborated also in exchange with engineers and statics persons, how to tackle this issue. And another thing was here a solution. We have here a cornerstone of a temple. So you can see this here on the drawing, and actually the wooden pillar is then placed on these cornerstone, and then the whole temple structure is erected. And as the cornerstone was heavily decayed, but it was still the original one, and internally there were no cracks, there was just a problem with the standing area of the column beam. We decided to make an indent not visible from outside, so just replace the core of this cornerstone with a new stone on which then the wooden pillar is standing, and fixed with a non-visible pin also. So in order to keep the original stone, but to also guarantee stability when the whole temple is reconstructed. And here some impressions of our capacity building. As I said, in all conservation interventions, we work on the one hand together with the local craftsmen, which we train or accompany in doing different conservation tasks. Here, for example, repointing of joints. And here we have a student of the Lumbini University working together with one of our textile students on these ritual shields on dry cleaning. And through all these collaboration and working campaigns, we were able to conserve and restore a number of monuments so far. So here you see just a selection, including the pillar of Yoganaren Lamala, which collapsed, and we could re-erect it and also conserve the fire-gilded sculpture on top. Another pillar, the lion pillar, also collapsed, and we also were able to re-erect this one. Here you see the temple roof of the Talechu temple being part of the royal palace complex. This was dismantled by the craftsmen at the trust on site, and our team was entrusted to conserve the fire-gilded pinnacle here on top of it, which was also done in the framework of, I think, 3 or 4 campaigns. And this temple, we did not reconstruct it actually, but we were involved in the conservation of the main idol located in the temple interior and of some stone blocks here in the foundation. So we more or less supported the other teams here. And with this short overview, I thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, we are very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mrs. Hasselberger. That was very, very elusive, detailed, and very informative lecture which you had, apprised us of the situation then and before. Now, before I move from extreme north to extreme south of India, from Nepal to Kerala, we thought that we can, before approaching Professor Nair, we thought that we'll keep a 5 minutes question hour session for our 2 scholars or all the panelists who are here. If anybody would like to ask anything from them before we move to Professor Nair. May I ask a question, Professor Christ? Actually, I remember when we had the 60 years of our diplomatic relation. And then I think so at that time, the rector of the university had also come at that time. And we had a close talk with the Indian institutions and talks who were also interested, like in Thailand, they were also interested in, conducting some sort of courses. But at the same time, they said that they wouldn't like to have courses for the elite students or something, but they would like to have like some sort of courses, training for the second line workers of museum and all that. And this particular, idea was applauded a lot and was praised, and then things were started working. But somehow the other, I think so, this didn't work out. Do you have the plans of reviving such projects again back in India? Or
you are right, Monish. Many things you can bring forward. Some things stay on the line and they become forgotten. And you are completely right that I remember this discussion with Rector Bast also in 2009. It's always the question that you have a very strong partner. Yeah, I think I'm not this kind of person who likes to come to a country and explain how things are done. Yeah, you need a strong partner. And when Professor Nair was in Delhi and for many years the head of conservation at NMI, many things were possible. When he left, the situation. Then. Professor Satish followed, but not in the same position, so he was not able to decide by himself alone. I think it's all a question if you have a very strong partner on the side and if the biochemistry is working. Yeah, I think everything is possible, but these are the important issues. International cooperation can only happen if you have two equal partners working in the same line and four with the same aim. But yeah, we were open and we are still open, I think. So let's see.
Okay. Okay.
We forgot, Martina forgot to say something with Nepal. Excellency Oeppinger and accompanied our cultural minister, Ms. Kneißl. I forgot the year. I think it was 2019.
2008.
Yeah. So we were able to have really a big delegation from the Austrian embassy in Nepal, and Rohit Ranjitka, who is my partner in Nepal, and myself, we could really explain to our minister all the performed works, and she could also meet all the people involved. I remember very well, and this was really an event. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions from before we move on to the next speaker? Okay, with that, I think so. I would like to invite Professor Nair, whose full name is Velayuddin Nair, M. Velayuddin Nair. Professor Nair is a former professor and dean at the National Museum Institute of History of Art, Conservation and Museology in New Delhi. He was elected council member and vice president of the International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property. And this is ICRAM, an intergovernmental organization associated with UNESCO. Professor Nair has served as council member and trustees of the International Institute for Conservation of Historic and Artistic Works and is now fellow of the IIC. Now, he has a very elaborate and a very big biodata, which if I think I start now, it will end before, I think so by the time our time is over, then his bio will be. Last, I would rather just come on to the thing that what he is doing now. Professor Nair, apart from being friend, philosopher, guide, and a nice person, is a chief advisor and is responsible for the museums in his own home state, Kerala, with the Department of Culture, Government of Kerala. And out of my interest, I would still like to know whether he's still managing the treasure of this temple, which had, only one room opened, which had multiplicity of treasure out over there was found. 9 rooms are still to be opened. Professor Nair, may I request you to kindly take us through your experiences of working together and how you have been, and especially I would like to request you to please say a few words on the Missouri site on Missouri, which we had, signed. You have signed an MOU with the Angewan Devin in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, or early 2008, early 2020, I suppose. So I give floor on to you now, Professor Nair. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Then I start. Excellency, Gabriela, Munish, Martina, Tanushree, and my friends, I deem it as a great privilege for me that you have included me in this.
Oh, yeah. Well.
That I could. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, because somehow the connection is lost. Anyway, I am speaking now. Because,
yeah.
Hello?
Sir, you're audible, but we can't watch you, but I mean, you're audible, sir.
Okay. I will reconnect once. Yeah, that is one second. Everything is coming up.
We are so much depending in these times on these technical issues. This is awful.
Hello? It has gone back. That is, anyway, without an introduction, I will start my business. Okay. I am thankful because you give me an opportunity. Therefore, Gabriela is speaking about the strong partner. Therefore, I don't know whether we were the strong partner. Anyway, I am describing some of the few points in which we could collaborate. Therefore, this way, because I think the Indo-Austrian collaboration started that is, I divided it into 3 phases. That is by NRLC days from 2005 and by LMI days and also after retirement period. And these things, because Gabriela, you remember you have invited me in 2005 to join with you for the NACO project. Of course, you have mentioned about the terrain and the importance and this thing. You remember that how became, it was very important to know how a partner becomes useful. Therefore, the thing is, you remember that you arrived from Vienna and I joined you at Simla, and we proceeded to NACO. And on the way, we were stopped by because there was a checkpoint in which the foreigners cannot enter NACO. That is, you require prior permission from the ministry for the foreigners to enter. And we were stuck. We didn't know what we should do. At that time, we got a news that the collector, that is the collector, that is who is the responsible, who is the person who is issuing passes.
I think so. There is some technical snag at Professor Nair's place.
And hello. We decided that somehow we should. It is very risky to stop a collector when he is passing through. He has no checkpoint. And finally, we have decided that somehow we will stop the collector. We stopped the collector himself. And the collector was very furious and asking, what is the matter? But fortunately with me, I had the Home Ministry identity card. I showed the partner that argued the collector that this is what we are going to do. That is, we have the guests coming from Vienna. And we could issue passes in situ in the same spot for the starting of the project at NACO. That we went to. Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
So you are audible.
Yeah.
Maybe if you want, you can switch off the video so that at least we can hear you.
Yeah. I'll try to do that because I will do that. Then what we did, it was that the project that is, then we had several such meetings in NACO, and it was, the project went on wonderfully and there was no problem. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please continue.
Yeah. Then there was a project, and we had good. That is, everything went safe, and there was no problem. And the next phase started in National Museum Institute when I joined as professor, and Gabriela came. The main point was that is, we had, as Gabriela said, we had intensive workshops and specialized workshops along with the Gabriela, and as a part of the Indo-Austrian collaboration, that when everything went successfully, and to have finally we decided that we should. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. Kindly continue, sir.
Yeah.
You are audible.
Hello.
Sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. We said, then finally we decided that is we should have summer schools. Summer schools, it was a noble idea for NMI. Never in India such summer schools was done with a foreign country. And therefore we decided it was a challenge before us. And at that time, that the first summer school was to happen in Vienna. And we had to mobilize support for our students to go there. And also the part will be, that is the local hospitality will be taken by Gabriel. That is, to my point, at that time, I met the wonderful point, that is personality of Munish, Munish, who promised all support from the embassy. The students never had passport or this thing. Within 3-4 days, we managed passport. You remember that I used to come with a passport, and you used to help me as free of cost stamping, and at the same day, and everything, that the embassy problem was solved. Gabriela was, and I narrated this incident to our Austrian embassy, our Indian embassy in Austria. They also followed the same procedure, I believe, that everything from the embassy, that was the support we received from the embassy, that everything went smooth, and the meeting took place without any, and Gabriela was so kind to make you remember that lavish arrangements, that even she arranged cycles for all the participants, from hiring from the friends and other relatives. And that the students were flying in Rome with cycles, and that is a wonderful opportunity that we got it, the MNMI got. And the academic collaboration, we decided that we should have joint PhDs, but that is still remains as a dream. Those say that Gabriela is correct, that 5 out of 18 PhD I owe to Gabriela, because of the support given by her in analysis of the problem, analysis of the samples, and also the guidance provided by her. That is, I hope that if the joint PhD program between NMI and National Museum, NMI and University of Applied Arts, Vienna would have common, it remains as a dream, and I hope it will materialize at some time in the future. And the next thing, that is, then I had to, that is, of course, that was an exciting program which we had in National Museum Institute. Then I had to leave National Museum Institute and came to Kerala. And of course, the Kerala government was kind enough to provide me, that is, facilities for all these things in Napier Museum. And with the Missouri support, we organized not only national but international events jointly with the University of Applied Arts. That was well appreciated, and that helped a lot in capacity building in Kerala. And you remember that we had a lot of floods in Kerala. That is, in 2018, it was a disaster for Kerala from floods, and this capacity building helped in saving the disaster, saving many of the cultural properties which would have been lost forever because of the. And we organized, that is, first aid measures, the long-term measurements for treatment. Everything was communicated to the custodians and all these things, and everything went smooth. And the last meeting, with your persuasion, the last seminar, the Excellency, the ambassador herself participated in the seminar, and she wanted to pursue many international events jointly with the University of Applied Arts, and but that still remains of a dream because of this COVID factor. And I am sure that when the COVID is over, everything will be settled and we will have many, many programs in the future jointly with Gabriela and also with the cooperation will become at a very greater stage and a very long, a very good stage. It will continue forever. And when you mentioned about the treasure at the Padmanabha Swami temple, Padmanabha Swami is the richest god in the world. We are still in the process of because though the committee, everything, the Supreme Court case is over, the Supreme Court was not ready to leave me. I am still continue as the coordinator of the expert committee for the Padmanabha Swami temple, and I am the chairman of so many, that is a conservation and museum project and everything. And I hope in the future we will be able to take, because now we are in the process of starting a museum, and after the COVID days, I think one of the discussions will be based on how to set up a treasure museum at high security and from following the museum principles in Kerala. This is what I think the museum, with you, the embassy and the cooperation, Gabriela, which we have, and we will be able to achieve many things in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nair. And I can assure you that you will get the same cooperation with our new ambassador, Her Excellency, Mrs. Katrina Wieser, who is among us. One very surprise element is here, Your Excellency, is that among the guests, we have the managing director of Muziris Heritage Project Kochi, for which we had last year we had signed an MOU with the help of Professor Nair's intervention. May I, with your kind permission, briefly ask Professor Mr. Naushad to kindly, say a few words about the project very briefly for 5 minutes, so that we can, then continue with our other thing. It's it's an honor to have you among us, Mr. Naushad. Mr. Naushad, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Welcome on board. Very, very pleasant surprise. And now we have a new ambassador also here. Would be nice for you to, brief her about the project, which has been continuing since last year.
Yeah. Thank you for giving an opportunity to speak. I was in a meeting along with my official duty, so I could not come to the meeting, but I was listening all the interactions there. And hi to Professor Gabriela and Munish Bhai and Dr. Nair and Tanushree and others. Because of COVID, we are almost closed, but our office is working, our museums and everything is closed. But parallelly, at present, we are mainly focusing our Alappuzha Heritage Project, which in around 21 museums, a lot of conservation work, then a lot of public infrastructure maintenance, and it's all going on. So during this COVID lockdown, we are mainly focusing our renovation and conservation work at various monuments. With regards to the activities going at Muziris, we are very thankful, and our gratitude is always with the Gabriela and team, because they have trained our officers in how to conserve and preserve our materials, which we have in plenty. Actually, majority of our excavation materials are still in the boxes, which the institute gave us the process how to preserve it and how to continue the preserving activity with the KCHR also. So we are eagerly waiting for the conference and other activity connected with the institute. At present, our the Pallium Palace, Pallium Nalakattu, and our all monuments are in good condition, and it's back to normal. Because of COVID, it is all closed now. And we are happy to host any meeting nationally or international level at our convention center. And we are this year we are mainly focusing our activity for non-formal education for school students in India. We are planning to bring around 1 lakh school students all over India to our project, and we have developed a particular program for these school students with the help of the state curriculum management team. So that's in a nutshell about the Muziris. And many of our activities like Spice Route Heritage Program with the 31 countries, and all other are in kept pending. Thank you. That's
Thank you very much, Mr. Nushad. Thanks. And even after the COVID pandemic, you have been, taking care of the Muziris project, which has become so near and dear to everybody, and especially with the intervention of Ankevan Deveen. Well, thanks a lot for attending session 2. Now I take over, or rather I request Dr. Tanushri Gupta to kindly come over and say a few words. I won't call her briefly, but I mean she's going to be touching the topics which have not been touched so far, especially in the field of conservation and the collection care in India. Again, I'm so sorry that Tanushri's bio is so huge and so illustrious, like Professor Nair, that if I start again, that will be, but I can only say that Tanushri is the most intelligent and most privileged student of Professor Gabriela Christ. And she is in India for the last 1 year, still building up the tie and bridges between Austria and India. And we are really happy, especially I'm very, very grateful to her that, I could collaborate with her this particular program. Tanushri, I hope you don't mind about your biodata not being, read in detail, but I think so whatever I said in the small content says voluminous matter. May I now request you to kindly take over the floor, please?
Thank you very much, sir, for this kind introduction. Intelligent, I'm not sure, but privileged, certainly. So good morning and good afternoon to colleagues and participants from different parts of the world. I would like to thank Her Excellency Wieser and Mr. Baal, Embassy of Austria, for this kind of opportunity for me to present preventive conservation and collection care in India. Let me just share my screen so I can share the presentation with you. So can you confirm if you can see the presentation in full screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I would briefly start with the Austria-India collaboration. And as Professor Christ already mentioned, that good international collaboration starts with two partners with the same aim. I think now it goes without saying that the India-Austria collaboration owes its success very much to the partnership, leadership, and vision of Professor Gabriela Christ and Professor M.V. Nair. So here I would like to summarize the activities that we have done since 2005, most of which has been already explained by Professor Christ and Professor Nair. We did different types of projects with kind support from, of course, Austrian Science Fund, FWF, which supported the NARCO project, then the Eurasia Pacific UNINET, EPU, the Austrian Agency for International Cooperation, Education and Research, OEAD. Both the organizations, EPU and OEAD, together supported our programs related to summer schools and also PhD internships and also the summers, and the Austrian Cultural Forum New Delhi and the Embassy of Austria and also the Embassy of India in Vienna. So the Institute has from time to time collaborated with different institutions, starting with the National Research Laboratory for Conservation of Cultural Heritage, which is based in Lucknow. For the NARCO project, that was the first project, as Professor Christ mentioned, which was the on-site conservation project. Then we collaborated with the National Museum Institute, where Professor Nair also later on moved, and we did approximately 6 workshops there, 1 conference, the 60 Years of India-Austria Jubilee Conference, and we did PhD internships and also 6 summer schools together. Then we moved to south to the Napier Museum, where Professor Nair also moved after his retirement. And we did a couple of workshops with the Napier Museum. And then recently, last year, in 2020, we started our project with the Muziris Projects Limited, Muziris Heritage Project. Meanwhile, we collaborated also with the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts and the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, both based in New Delhi. And like Professor Christ mentioned, that some of our partners are also EPU members. So this is National Museum Institute and the Indira Gandhi National Center for the Arts. Only the organizations which are in academics can be members of EPU. So Institute of Conservation, University of Applied Arts, Vienna is a member, and also these 2 institutions in India. We work in different formats, like NARCO was an on-site conservation project, and then we do a lot of workshops. Mostly these are usually 1 week to 10 days maximum. Then we have done conferences, seminars, of course, and PhD internships, in total 8. I will come to that later. Summer schools, and also last year we designed online summer school. Before we go further, I would, just 1 second. Yeah. So I would like to quickly mention why this Austria-India collaboration was necessary, or how we use this collaboration in essence. So the basic reason behind is that we have difference in experience. So the academic, although conservation of cultural heritage is not a new concept, it was there always, because had it not been there, we could not have been seeing all the cultural heritage objects that we see now. But the academic development of conservation started much earlier in Europe as compared to India. And this is the reason that in Vienna, we have well-established laboratories in the Institute for painting conservation, textile conservation, object conservation, and stone conservation. And we have also well-planned systems for preventive conservation and collection care. And also the conservation science is very much blended with the day-to-day work that we do in the Institute in Vienna. We take all this experience from Vienna and try and collaborate with our partners in India to not only knowledge transfer in one direction, but in both the directions. So there are some areas where Vienna is very powerful, like I would say in the practical laboratories. But for when we come to preventive conservation and collection care, there is so much that we can learn also from our partners. I mean, in this presentation, I'm talking about India, but also in our international projects with different partners, different countries, there is always something to learn from the traditional methods and materials that are being practiced over the period of time. The idea remains that we learn from each other, see what is scientifically approved, what is not, and try to validate everything that we learn. Conservation science in this way plays a major role. Like I said, it's always about mutual understanding, mutual learning. In India, we do have laboratories, we do have state-of-the-art instruments that we need for analytical studies, but what is missing is the expertise of the person who can work on those instruments and more so work on the object, work on the samples which come from the cultural heritage. For example, in industrial research, maybe we have always big amount of samples to work with. So the people who are, the scientists who are working in India, they are more used to working with big amount of samples. But when it comes to cultural heritage, we have to test the material which is part of the original object. And we do not have the choice to take a lot of material out of the object. So we always have like really tiny pieces which we can hardly see from naked eyes, but we always work under the microscope. So this is where the entire approach as to how we work on the samples of cultural heritage differs. And this is why conservation science is important. And the exchange in how we go about it is important. The next point here, I would say why India-Austria collaboration is very interesting and is helping to grow the field for professionals in India and also in Austria is the difference in climate. Austria has a temperate climate and India has a tropical climate. And when there is this different climates, the objects which are there, maybe they are the same material, but because they were always kept in a different climate, they age differently, they behave differently, they deteriorate differently, and also the solutions that we apply, the treatments that we apply will also differ. So this becomes a very interesting study that we learn from each other's approach. We know how we do a certain thing in a certain climate, but we cannot just go. So for example, from Austria, we cannot just go to India and say that this is how it is done and we can just apply that. We have to always study. And then the experience behind how we go about in different climates of finding solution counts a lot. For this cooperation, we focus on students, researchers, and in-service professionals. So like Mr. Munish Bal mentioned that the training of second-line professionals. So this is also something that we have covered in our, I would say, majorly in our Napier Museum project, about which I'll be speaking in detail. Students, of course, we have students from National Museum Institute. They always learn this hands-on training and everything. Researchers, like I said, it's important because we have to research everything. Conservation of cultural heritage is a new field, and there are many aspects which require research. And in-service professionals, I think Professor Nair would also agree, and he can add more to it, that in India, most of the professionals who are working with museums are not always trained in conservation with a degree. They learn conservation when they join in the job and they get training projects and everything, and that's how they learn and develop. We'll come to that as we'll go through the Napier Museum project in my slides later. So the focus areas remain hands-on training. Like I said, in the laboratories, we have paintings, textiles, objects, and stone laboratories with experts there in Vienna, analytical studies, and learning from experience in local climates. Yeah, so I will briefly talk about the PhD internships that we had so far. Like I said, that 8 PhD internships together with the National Museum Institute, where students could the PhD students could travel from India to Austria for different amounts of time. And the support here has been given by OEAD, Eurasia Pacific UNINET, mostly by the Ernst Mark Grant Worldwide. And apart from the PhD projects that we were doing under the leadership of Professor Nair, Professor Christ helped us in that. Dr. Tanya Bayrova, our conservation scientist at the Institute of Conservation, helped us a lot with that. And we also got the opportunities to work in the laboratory on the on-site collection care projects of the Institute. And we also got the opportunity to participate in the workshops, conferences, excursions, and also it helped us a lot in network expansion. So here, I would briefly like to mention that I was there as intern 3 times, and my colleague Muhammad Ali Nasir, Nitin Kumar, Dipakshi Sharma, and Noor Jahan were also there. As you can see, they all worked on very varied topics. So I worked on acrylic paintings. Ali Nasir, he worked on carpets. Nitin Kumar on leather. Dipakshi on palm leaf manuscripts, and Noor Jahan on wall paintings. What I'd like to mention here is that the Institute has a very good network. So most of the times we get to work in the laboratory in-house, and as and when required, we get help also from the external faculty in different institutions. And the collaboration of the Institute is not only within Austria, but also outside of Austria. So every analytical support that we needed, we always received it. In the second picture, you can see my colleague working at the Boku laboratory. So I think thanks to close collaboration and cooperation of the Institute within Austria and outside of Austria, that we could successfully complete our PhD projects. I think first 4 of us have already received the doctorate. Noorjahan, if not already completed, must be completing it really soon. Then few words about the summer school, as Professor Christ mentioned, that in 2014 we started with India. 2014, 2015, Indian students came to Austria. 2016-17, we expanded. So the summer school was joined also by students from Ukraine, Belarus, and China, in addition to India. And then we decided that the summer school should go on rotation. So in 2019, together with my colleague, Johanna Runkel, the students also from Vienna and other countries went to China for the summer school. And in 2020, of course, they were supposed to go to Mongolia, but because of Corona, we had to change all the plans and we moved online. So we did 3 lecture series on different topics last year, which were joined by, of course, all our international partners. And yeah, I think this was the solution that we could resort to last year. And we hope that in the next years, we will go to different countries as we had planned. I think this one gives students an experience not only with the laboratories and everything, but also to learn from different cultures, which is very essential when we are working in the field of cultural heritage. Now I would quickly move to the project of collection care at Napier Museum, Trivandrum, India. I have taken this one as a case, and what I can say is that other workshops that we have done, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we have done a lot of workshops with National Museum Institute, especially, we follow more or less the same pattern. So yeah, so like I said, this the major difference is the difference of climate. In Trivandrum, the climate is always hot and humid, so always between 30, 32, and the humidity always between 60 and 90. So that makes a different case for us, an interesting one. We worked on the Napier Museum, which is located right in the center of Trivandrum, a glimpse into the galleries. They are all in a very traditional setting, and a collection which is quite varied. Collections not only from India, the Chola bronzes and the wonderful carvings, but also objects collected from outside India over the period of time. So this project started as the government of Kerala made an experts committee which wanted to develop new museums in the area, but also wanted to take care of the museums which are already existing. This is when Professor Nair was chosen as the head of the committee, and he invited us to look into the collection and help them prepare a roadmap as to how they should go about it. The Napier Museum was, of course, was selected as the museum to start with. We did our first workshop there in 2016, where we made a collection survey with the participants, not only from the Napier Museum, but we invited also in-service professionals from different museums in the nearby areas, so that not only in-service professionals from Napier Museum could derive benefit out of it, but they could also make a team with their colleagues in the nearby area, because they are also more or less facing similar situations. And the team was also joined by students and researchers from the National Museum Institute. So we started with very basics of conservation, collection survey, identifying risks and causes of damage, handling and caring of objects, writing a condition report about the objects, and effects of climate and light. And pests is a major problem in India. So integrated pest management, how they should go about labeling, and what kind of materials can be used in the museums and what not. We always divide our workshops into 3 sections. So we start with essential theory, not too much theory, then demonstrations as to how objects have to be handled, and then hands-on practice by the participants. So here I will just quickly go through that. We delve into different features like what kind of light there is, what kind of light is okay, what is not, if there is sunlight coming, what kind of objects can be sensitive to it, how are the different supports and placements and mountings like, if they're okay for the objects or not. How are the showcases, if there are lights inside the showcases, if the showcases are too full, if there is microclimate, like. And then I will talk a little bit about the storage, because this was the problem area, and this leads us also to our second workshop. Here we identified that the existing storage of the Napier Museum did not have good climate, was very high humidity. There was not enough ventilation. Access was a problem. There a lot of objects and too less space. So we decided that this is the area which requires improvement on priority. And yeah, so this was our first workshop where we tried to identify what the problems are. And when I say we try to identify, it's not just us who do it. We train the team of the participants, and then they came up with recommendations, and together with them we made this list of what all has to be done. We tried to make a list in priority as to what has to go first, what has to go next. And like I said, we decided that the storage is the area which needs immediate attention. Since it's not possible to create a new storage overnight, we decided that we move the objects from old storage to an interim storage where the climate conditions are better. Here we worked so this was then done after 1 year of the previous workshop. So together with the team of National Museum Institute students and staff of the Napier Museum and also other museums, we created an interim storage. So this area was taken within the exhibition space, and we used all the showcases and almirahs and everything that were already there, because this was a temporary storage and we did not want to spend a lot of money buying used things which would be of no use of later. And we tried to stay in the system. We tried to use cotton cloth to cover the tables and everything. So in our workshops and in our practice, we try to adapt to the local systems. And we created a working space outside where the team worked. We divided this into 3 regions. So one is the cleaning area, one is the assessment area, and the other one is security region where the security check was made. I will quickly go through it now because I think I am running out of time. So as you can see, the pictures, the objects were moved from the old storage to the working area to the temporary storage. We maintained really high security that no object is lost in between. We did all the dry cleaning together with the team, checked them, secured them, and made a condition report for every object, and emptied the old storage and moved them in the interim storage. And this is how it looks now. And the museum then planned to renovate the building, and then they asked us for help in training on handling, packing, and moving of museum objects. We did that. So this workshop was done in August 2017, where we helped our colleagues in packing of objects, and also did a research on what kind of materials can be used and cannot be used. We always brought with us the already tested materials from Austria that could be used with the original objects. But for practice, of course, we tried to buy material which was locally available. But before the locally available material, like these foams and ribbons that you see, before they could be used with the original object, they had to be tested. We call it ODI testing, where we check that there are no dangerous fumes coming out of the material because they can damage the museum objects. And we took them to Vienna for testing, and then we later on, of course, found out that those were not suitable for the museum. So that hunt is on. But for the museum objects, we use the materials that were tested. And so this was this. And then our last workshop there was on planning of exhibition and storage, where we tried to work on the pieces that were there already on exhibition, and we tried together with the staff to improve the condition. Of course, this gives us also a chance to look into the culture of Kerala. We visited Kerala archives. We could see the workshops of wooden sculptures. So this gives us a lot of scope also to learn both ways. So with this project, of course, like I said, we have recommendations prepared. We have a roadmap as to how we go about it. But right now, the museum is probably closed for renovation. So we will continue as and when we are required. This also I mentioned, we try to employ traditional and locally available solutions, but of course only after testing. And yeah, we are always, so this is true not only for Napier Museum, but also for other workshops as well, that we try to analyze the situation, set a prioritized list of action, and everything that we train, we hope that we do not have to train the people there again in the same subject, because we hope that they'll be able to carry it on themselves. And of course, raising awareness of staff and finding simple, easy, and sustainable solution remains the key factor. So thank you very much for your attention. And I think we are lucky we have Professor Christ and Professor Nair with us also from Napier Museum. Mrs. Manjula Devi has also joined us. So I think we have many people to answer if there are any questions. Thank you very much.
Well, with that we come to end of the session, but floor is still open for a very brief 1 or 2 question and answer before we extend the vote of thanks. Is there somebody who would like to question our panelists about their work, the projects? Okay, I think so. Nobody has anything to ask. So with that, I would rather request our ambassador, Her Excellency, Mrs. Katharina Wiese, to just say a vote of thanks, and before I individually thank everybody. May I request Ambassador Wiese to kindly thank our panelists and guests.
Well, of course, thank you very much for this really interesting seminar. I learned a lot. Of course, I had heard and did know before also of many of these initiatives, but it was great to get a more comprehensive, also historical overview. I forgot to say in the beginning, but you probably know anyway, that of course the embassy in New Delhi is also responsible for Nepal and for quite a few other countries as well. So it was great to hear about collaboration with India, but also with Nepal, which I visited in the 80s and last in 1990s. So it will be very interesting to go back and see how Kathmandu has developed since then. I very much look forward also to coming to Kerala and to visiting all of the other projects and meeting with you in the future. Well, thank you very much for this initiative. It was a fantastic seminar, I think. And good luck for your future cooperation, which hopefully for all of us will take place in a physical format and not only online in the future. But I must say online is much better than nothing. So we are grateful for this opportunity and for this initiative. And I hope to see you all in the future as soon as possible. Thank you very much. And Munish, now for your individual.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thanks a lot. Professor Christ, would you like to say something, a closing remark or anything? Or I'd
like to greet everybody, and I'm look forward to come again to New Delhi and to meet Her Excellency in person, and of course you too, Munish. So this is everything. And of course, Professor Nair, what should I say? I think it was very nice to meet you all here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And with that, I would like to, there are a couple of thanks, because a seminar or a webinar of this magnitude cannot be handled alone. There are a lot of behind the curtain players also. And I think so a word of thanks to them is very, very necessary. First of all, I would like to thank to the Department of Culture of the Federal Ministry of European and International Affairs of the Republic of Austria, who had, given us the sanction permission for conducting this. Obviously, then, of course, we have with us Her Excellency Mrs. Katharina Wiese, the Ambassador of Austria, whose kind support, without that, it wouldn't have been realized. And I will be very wrong, and I would have, commit a mistake if I don't mention over here Mr. Matthias Radostic, who is on home leave, who initiated this particular project with the idea that we continue such talks and in future too. And of course, we have our illustrious panelist, Professor Christ, who really, this time has not done any workshop or any lecture series or anything, but just explained to us in a simple manner how things have been, moving for the last so many years, and how the relationship has built by conservation and preservation. And thanks to Martina, thanks to our friends, Professor Nair, Tanushri, what should I say? Thank you very much. That would be too dilute word to say to you, but still thanks a lot. Then my team, our team of Austrian Cultural Forum, Rishabh, Tanya, and of course, Munish. And then we have team from the Austrian Embassy. And then we have among us Professor Dr. Achal Pandya, who has always been with us and with whom we have very closely worked from the Indira Gandhi National Center of Arts. I would like to thank him also for taking and helping us and navigating through different, whenever the things were required. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all our guests who have attended, long distance or or from India, Austria, Nepal. We are really, really grateful, and thank you very much indeed for joining us. And with that, I think we'll come to close the session. With your permission, Your Excellency, we close the session now with the hope that we soon meet. And by the way, I'm so sorry, I could not, this particular session, kindly correct me, Professor Christ, if I'm wrong. You said that this particular session is a sort of a prelude to the 10 lectures which you will be conducting, or you are envisaging to conduct from October to December, with regard to hybrid workshops and stone management and all that. So I hope we achieve that particular point. Thanks a lot once again. Thank you very much.